Our next item, Mr. Body.
Good evening. So we wanted to switch things up a tad bit with the police commission meetings. So every meeting from now on, we want to sort of leave you guys with something that you can learn and also leave room for community discussion. So, and things that relate to the community. So in 2014, Michael Brown was killed by a police officer and there was no body camera on. So following that 2014 incident, there have been a lot of police agencies that have been adopting body-worn cameras. In 2014 also, Cleveland was the Department of Justice found that Cleveland was in the practice, in a pattern of using excessive use of force, so we entered into an agreement with the Department of Justice, our consent decree. So the consent decree has 12 main topics, and one of those 12 main topics is officer assistance and support and equipment and resources. And under that equipment and resources topic, I want to talk about WCS, and that's wearable camera systems, better known as body cams. So body cameras aren't necessarily mandated within the consent decree, but the city of Cleveland adopted the whole body camera policy in 2015. They created a GPO in mid-2015, and that GPO basically itemizes and addresses all the issues, and it was created to establish guidelines for the use of management, storage, retrieval, and supervision regarding wearable camera systems to provide officers with clear guidance on the use of WCSs. All officers who are on the police force and who are given WCSs are required to wear those cameras and engage and activate those cameras immediately. So during the tour of duties, the requirement for recording, officers shall immediately, upon initiating response to a call for service and during all investigative or enforcement contacts with the public, place the WCS into event mode, including but not limited to call to service, traffic stops, arrests, searches, interviews, pursuits, and prisoner citizens transportations. So with the WCSs, there are two modes. One mode is event mode. Event mode is the mode that records everything. The other mode is the buffer mode. And the buffer mode is which is a 30-second loop that continuously loops until they activate the actual camera. So one of the things that was included within the GPO was that itemized list of things that all officers must adhere to, but secondary employment wasn't included in that. And secondary employment meaning working at the club, working at the corner store, coming here at the recreation center and acting as security to keep things in line. So the argument is, should officers be required to wear the cameras? I'm gonna go off script. Just to be honest, I want to have a discussion with you to educate you guys on body-worn cameras. So body-worn cameras aren't mandated here in the city of Cleveland under the consent decree. They do have the GPO that does itemize the guidelines and the use, the retrieval, the storage, the recording, and how you're supposed to engage with citizens when using the body cams. A lot of times, people question the use of the body cams. So over 6,000 agencies currently use the body cams, and Cleveland just included. So there's no concrete evidence that shows that body cams are effective. So Harvard did a study in DC where they rolled out a plan where they didn't see any increase or decrease in use of force, and they also didn't see any increase or decrease as it relates to citizen complaints. So our body cameras really needed. You also see reports where you have police agencies where they saw a decrease in crime, a decrease in use of force, and a decrease in the complaints. So we don't know who to take it from. Bringing things present, what I wanted to do with the presentation was actually have you guys engage in conversation. So quite recently, at the University Circle, there was an officer who was off duty, and he was working as security at University Circle where a young man lost his life. But that officer was doing secondary employment, and he didn't have on his WCS. So there's no telling what went on. So I wanted to engage in a community discussion, and you guys engage with one another and have a discussion whether or not body cameras are needed, the use, and should officers be required to always wear body-worn cameras when having secondary employment. Yes? No, I'm saying I want you guys to discuss with one another. And I'm not saying, like...
So you want them to get into small groups?
Nah, I was done. I went off the script, like, with my PowerPoint and everything, but... So I don't want to make it boring for you guys, because I know sometimes things can be lengthy, but I want to make it relatable. So body-worn cameras was one of the things that was most mentioned on our Facebook statuses and online. So that was something that the community thought was pertinent. So it's an opportunity for us to hear more from you and to learn. But I also want to make sure that you guys learn something each time. Like, learn about the consent decree. As Ms. Tabb said, we've been in existence for 2 years, and we're trying to perfect this thing and reach out to the community and get people engaged, because we can't create any change within the police force or within the city. Well, no, I'm going to. No. It's that instance. We just want you guys to be more engaged and more involved, so you just won't be just sitting in the audience. We want your input. We want you to encourage more people to come, and we want your insight. You guys are the experts, so in order to create change, we need the experts to be involved, let their voices be heard, and to know what's going on. Can you guys please engage in it's five chairs in each row, form a circle, and we can have open discussion about body-worn cameras. Do we see the importance of them? Do they need to go? Should they wear them at secondary employment? Was some great discussion over here in my group. You know, I told you I did go off the cuff, but my view on it was there's two officers here and they can explain it better than me, so why should I have to present it? But I want you guys to possibly share some of your insight and some of the things that you share within your group discussion with the group at large. Or is there anyone willing to share or share what you was talking about?
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, what we talked about in our discussion was the fact that they're twofold here. One, that police officers, when they go on duty, when they're on the clock with the city of Cleveland, they are required to have the body cameras on them, and when they go to a scene, they have to turn the body camera on. The question that now that we're evolving is the question on whether or not, when they have secondary employment, should they be required then to have the cameras on them and have them, and then be required to turn them on? That's the question. And it's like a situation where right now they have I think the police officer said they can volunteer to do it, but that's not a mandate that they have to have that camera. But when they're working for the city of Cleveland, when they go in and they have their gun, they have their badge, they have their uniform, they have to then grab the camera, put the camera on, and then they go to work. Then if they got to go work for a secondary employment, they still have their gun on, they still have the uniform on, they still have the badge, but they are not required to have the camera. I firmly believe they should have their camera on, because we just had a situation at the corner alley. We don't know what happened at the corner alley, but if that police officer had been on duty and then been called to the corner alley, he would have got to the corner alley, he would have had to turn on his camera and would at least have some indication of what happened. But because that same police officer who had on a taxpayer uniform, taxpayer gun, taxpayer badge, and not required to have that camera on, we're still trying to figure out how did that young boy get killed that night. And we firmly believe that there's certain things that could happen that allows a police officer to then be able, because the police officer here was telling us, there's now technology that doesn't allow, that says that they're not required to have to go back to the district. One of the situations that was before, they had to go back to the district to download. Now he's saying with the new technology and the new cameras that we have, they don't necessarily have to go back to download, but if there's an incident, they got to tag it. So our conversation is now centered on how do we now require police officers to have a camera on the secondary duty when an incident happens.
Thank you. Does anyone?
My name is Pat Needham. I'm here for Surge. And I believe strongly that if someone specifically wants to hire police for security, then they have to pay what it really costs to have police do that security, which includes the time it takes, the cameras, and the time it takes to upload and log that video. And if you're not willing to do that, then you should be working with Wackenhut.
Thank you. Anyone else want?
So my name's Kareem Hinton. I'm with Black Lives Matter Cleveland. We were discussing body-worn cameras, and I think that there are more issues involved. One of them is who's in control of that evidence. So when you have officers that have this equipment, they're required to go back to the station, which some of them have a problem with because they don't want to do it on their time. So they don't want to get paid, or I mean, they want to get paid for that time. Well, I feel that it's not as much time to just be able to go there and drop that off, because we feel that there should be someone there who, that once they turn that in, they're in control of that evidence, or what is potentially evidence, because we found, and it's just a fact, that when folks are policing themselves or in control of evidence that could very well be against them, dishonest things can happen. So we feel that, for example, there should be an independent group that is in control of that evidence when it's brought in. And so all the officer has to do is just hand it over. One of the things that comes to mind that kind of justifies this rationale of thinking in regards to officers not being in control of certain evidence is, for example, we had an incident that happened not too long ago where an officer was involved in a domestic dispute. Officers were called to that home, and what had happened was there was a report that said that officers found drugs on that officer, and they found drugs in 6 locations of that home. Now, that was in a media or Cleveland.com report. Well, Cleveland.com then comes and says, well, officers contacted us and said they made a mistake. So now, they didn't find so much drugs as first previously said. And so with that understood, I think that that can only be done because a non-independent body was in control of that evidence. But if you have an independent body in control of that evidence, you'll never have those kinds of discrepancies. And there'll never be a misunderstanding as far as if it's an honest mistake or if it's someone doing it because they're trying to protect one of their brother officers. So I think what is key is that we take control away from the camera footage as well as evidence and put it in the control of independent bodies, and I think we'll get a little bit more honesty and we'll get some more accountability.
Thank you. Anyone else? Who? Well, I want to thank you guys for that energy. Like, the goal is to solve this problem together. So every time we meet, I want you guys to hopefully bring someone else with you. and also engage in conversation and bring your insight and your experiences, your good and your bad experiences that you may have had with the Cleveland Police Department so we can help create some change.